Florida is not a vacation state. It just looks like one. Slide off the highway into the water and you find something that most tourists never see and most Americans don't think about. 200 years ago, the Everglades covered over 11,000 square miles, more than a third of the entire state of Florida. The only ecosystem of its kind on the entire planet, and humans drained it, built over it. What's left is still feeding the drinking water supply for nearly 8 million people. In the shallows, baby alligators hatch already, knowing how to hunt. And some of them will live past 100 years old. To the south, the Florida Keys are sitting on coral reef, not rock, meaning the ground beneath every road and every house was once a living organism. But in 2023, ocean temperatures hit 93 degrees Fahrenheit around the reef, the hottest ever recorded there since measurements began, and wiped out entire coral species in a single summer. Buried in the wetlands, archaeologists found the Sugar Pot site, a place proving that long before Florida was a state, people figured out how to survive inside one of the most hostile and extraordinary places in North America. Nobody warns you that Florida has a wild side, and that is exactly why this video exists. Let's start right with a place that looks like a forest standing in water. Big Cypress Swamp. The water is what keeps the swampy centre of South Florida alive, with trees rising straight from the swamp instead of sinking. Even the ground moves here. The water slides beneath your feet like slow glass, carrying fish, crustaceans, and tiny drifting islands. Cypress trees have adapted in their own way, breathing through knees, root spikes that poke above the surface to draw in air. Among the cypress shadows you might spot a sign warning about one very shy cat, the Florida Panther. And trust me, around here, that sign is not a joke. Unlike the thunderous roar you might expect, this predator chirps, squeaks, and even purrs, at times sounding like an oversized house cat that forgot its own power. It moves through swamp water almost without a sound, slipping past tree trunks like a shadow, then in a flash, explodes upward, launching higher than some rooftops. People call it a panther, but it is in fact a puma. Its survival here strengthened by a carefully managed genetic rescue program that helped pull the population back from the brink. Sadly, this cat is among the rarest on Earth, but not far from its tracks, the swamp hides something just as hard to find: the scattered remains of a Native American site called Sugar Pot. Here, there are no walls or towers, just broken pottery, stone tools, and charred bone resting in the mud, like a puzzle missing most of its pieces. It may not look like much, yet the swamp became a natural vault, its wet, acidic soil preserving what was left behind. Although the ground may seem destructive, the same waterlogged earth can actually slow decay, allowing certain traces to outlast those on dry land. Within those remnants lies a larger story. The people who lived here weren't simply passing through. They learned to fish, cook, and survive in one of the continent's toughest wetlands. Even a single pottery shard reveals their ingenuity, showing how they shaped daily life in a place many today couldn't handle for a weekend. The same swamp that buried these fragments now shelters one of the strangest birds alive, a creature so oddly shaped it seems like nature left the draft unfinished, the wood stork. First you notice the bald, scaly head. No feathers, just bare grey skin, like a bird half-dressed. Yet that exposed skin stays clean as it probes muddy shallows for food. Rather than relying on sight, the stork drags its open bill through cloudy water and snaps it shut the instant something brushes it, a reflex faster than a human blink. Its timing is just as precise. The stork nests only when the dry season drops the water, enough to crowd fish into tight pools. Without that narrow window, the colony simply waits, delaying parenthood until conditions are right. As the water recedes, another quiet resident appears, the Florida goby, a tiny fish that almost goes unnoticed, yet lives by the same changing cycle. It's small enough to fit in a spoon and lives in water that changes from heavy floods to almost dry. To stay in place, it uses suction-like fins to hold onto rocks and roots, so the current doesn't carry it away. And just above the surface, a whole concert is made by tiny green musicians who have absolutely no interest in staying invisible. The grasshoppers. Their colour blends so perfectly with the blades around them that you could stand inches away and never notice. What's crazy is that they don't sing with their mouths at all. Instead, they draw their back legs against their wings like a bow across strings, turning each body into a living instrument. When it's time to attract a mate, the male simply repeats that rhythm. Louder, faster, more urgent. Once a female picks her musician, mating happens fast. No courtship dance, no gift, just a quick connection, and then both go straight back to surviving. Behind the spectacle, however, these insects quietly shape the ecosystem, chewing through plant matter and returning nutrients to the soil like small, tireless recyclers. For all that noise, though, they carry no venom or armour, only speed, timing, and the gamble that nothing reacts quickly enough. Of course, every note carries risk. Each chirp is a signal, and the swamp is full of listeners skilled at tracing sound to its source. So when the chorus suddenly stops mid-song, it's already too late. An orb weaver spider has been waiting in the shadows the whole time, and silence here means something just got caught. These little engineers construct some of the most precise circular webs in nature, each strand spaced with remarkable symmetry. But this intricate design is temporary. Almost every day, the spider takes down its web, consumes the silk to reclaim its protein, and spins a fresh snare before sunrise. The thread itself is surprisingly strong, pound for pound, as tough as steel, letting the spider stretch one of the swamp's strongest materials between two thin blades of grass. Its prey is wrapped in silk within seconds of landing, immobilized completely before it even has a chance to struggle free. Even reproduction carries risk. The much smaller male must approach cautiously, each step a delicate negotiation that does not always end in survival. Meanwhile, the female prepares for the next generation, wrapping her eggs in dense layers of silk, strong enough to withstand rain, wind, and rising water, a small fortress hanging in the air. Nearby, another tangle rises at the water's edge, where trees seem to walk into the sea, the Florida mangrove forests. Here, mangroves grow directly from salt water, their arching roots lifting trunks above the tide, like natural scaffolding. What appears to be a solid wall of green is, in fact, threaded with narrow channels that fill and empty with each tide, quietly renewing the forest from within. Below the surface, the roots interlock into a living barrier that anchors the shoreline. Without them, waves would steadily carry the land away. While the forest settles into darkness, the ones having the most fun in these areas are definitely the raccoons. These masked bandits move easily between land and water, slipping into tidal channels as confidently as they climb through branches overhead. Upside down or right side up, they navigate mangrove trunks with surprising balance, turning tangled roots into their personal playground. Their front paws function almost like hands, sensitive enough to explore crevices by touch alone, feeling for movement in water too murky for sight. Mothers raise fearless young, nudging them into the shallows early, so they grow comfortable in a world ruled by shifting tides. At night, their sharp hearing and glowing eyes give them an edge, detecting the smallest rustle long before danger or opportunity gets close. Opportunistic and adaptable, they make use of whatever the mangroves provide, from shellfish to fallen fruit to the occasional unguarded nest. Even when confronted by snapping claws or sharp shells, they adjust quickly, proving that flexibility is their greatest weapon. When these night clowns wrap up their raids, the maze of endless watery hideouts unfolds at the edge, the 10,000 islands in Florida. Sailors tagged it for the countless small mangrove isles scattered everywhere, fooling the eye into seeing thousands where paths twist endlessly. Each tide replaces the water entirely, drawing in fresh fish as the ocean breathes in and out, while mangrove roots quietly trap drifting debris and stitch it into new land. During low tide, the muddy ground begins to stir, with hundreds of fiddler crabs surfacing at once, each waving a single oversized claw to signal rivals and attract mates. That exaggerated limb, sometimes nearly as large as the rest of his body, stands in sharp contrast to the female's two small, balanced claws. They wave in rapid bursts, creating a restless shimmer across the mudflat as females quietly judge precision and rhythm over sheer size. Once a mate is chosen, the male seals the burrow entrance with a plug of mud, transforming a simple tunnel into a guarded nursery. Feeding looks less dramatic, but no less clever. They scoop up sediment, sift it for microscopic nutrients, and leave behind neat pellets that slowly reshape the shoreline. Even that oversized claw has a second purpose, helping maneuver food as efficiently as it once signaled courtship. As these tiny engineers churn and sculpt the flats below, larger and far gentler shapes drift through the nearby shallows. Manatees. These slow swimmers resemble floating sofas with flippers, gliding through the water in unhurried silence. Despite their size, manatees live entirely on seagrass, fermenting it in complex stomach chambers built for plant life. Unlike fish, they breathe air like we do, rising every few minutes for a steady gulp, even while half asleep. What stands out most is their curious nature around boats and swimmers. They sometimes nudge forward gently, as if investigating a new neighbour. that openness can come at a cost. Propeller strikes leave pale scars across their backs, thin lines that tell close-call stories. Even so, their thick skin regenerates with surprising resilience, sealing wounds into tougher patches over time. Mothers nurse calves just beneath the surface, carefully positioning them so each breath comes easily between swells. The young remain beside their mothers for more than a year, learning safe routes through waterways filled with hidden risks. Step farther out from these gentle shallows, the mangroves give way to the open ocean, and rising from it, one small island at a time, the Florida Keys. Many don't realise these islands aren't solid ground at all, but the exposed crest of a fossilised coral reef formed over centuries. The entire stretch sits barely above sea level, so a strong storm surge could flood much of it. Yet communities have long lived here, accepting the ocean as an unpredictable neighbour. In some areas, the shallows are so clear you can spot fish, coral formations, even sea turtles from above, as if looking into glass. This island arc also marks the meeting point of two immense waters, the Atlantic Ocean on one side and the Gulf of Mexico on the other, where currents, colours and marine life shift noticeably. Gliding over these currents, brown boobies search for movement, wings locked as they skim just above the surface. Skimming over these waters, brown boobies scan for movement, wings locked as they ride the wind just above the surface. Then, without warning, they fold and drop, plunging headfirst from dizzying heights before slicing cleanly into the sea. At times, sharks patrol these same feeding grounds, yet they strike quickly, often securing their catch before larger predators can close in. Back on shore, that sleek precision vanishes. They scrape shallow nest hollows that often grow into messy mounds of twigs, bones, feathers, and even scraps of trash. Courtship is just as unpolished. Instead of singing, pairs honk, whistle, and cluck, touching bills and bowing skyward, as nest building becomes a noisy show of devotion. Ironically, their name comes from the Spanish word bobo, meaning foolish, a nickname sailors coined after watching them land awkwardly on ships. Throughout the islands live the key deer, adapted to survive within these low-lying coastal forests and freshwater pockets. They move softly through the brush, a full-grown buck scarcely larger than a family dog, which gives them a quiet, almost delicate presence. Despite their size, they are confident swimmers, crossing narrow channels between islands when food or shelter calls from the other side. Today, they remain endangered, their future resting on the fragile balance of land, water, and careful protection. Drawn to salt-loving plants that grow near open clearings and roadsides, they sometimes wander closer to people than they should. Females raise their fawns alone, hiding them thick in the underbrush, rather than keeping them within the herd. The young survive by remaining perfectly still, trusting camouflage and patience over speed. Away from the island's long-standing hardwood hammocks rise, where a different side of deer life plays out in Highland's Hammock State Park. It holds some of the oldest trees in the state, bald cypress giants so thick and towering, standing next to one feels like standing next to a living skyscraper. It's hard to believe, but these trees have been growing here longer than most countries have existed, and they're still thriving. Beneath them, the swamp never fully drains. The water lingers on purpose, slow and tea-dark, and that constant soak is exactly what keeps the whole system ticking. The fun twist: boardwalks glide right over the muck, allowing visitors to stroll above alligators, turtles, and wading birds. Most visitors stroll right past the park's strangest resident, an animal that doesn't belong here at all, an unwelcome guest spreading quietly but quickly: the cane toad. It didn't arrive by accident. It was introduced on purpose to control crop pests, only to become far more troublesome than the insects it was meant to manage. Stranger still, this toad is basically wearing a poison factory on its back. Two swollen glands behind the head that release a thick, milky toxin powerful enough to kill a dog within minutes. Any predator bold enough to bite learns fast, and often fatally, because the native wildlife here never evolved alongside something quite this poisonous. What truly fuels its success is appetite. This amphibian eats almost anything it can overpower, from insects and small frogs to pet food left on porches, even other toads. A single female can lay tens of thousands of eggs at once, more than once a year. So after just one rainy night of mating calls, a whole new wave is already on the way. Meanwhile, local frogs sharing the same damp ground are edged out, not by dramatic battles, but by slowly losing food and space to a competitor playing by very different rules. While the toad's quiet takeover unfolds along the forest floor, in the nearby trees another presence waits. Small, watchful, and easy to miss until it blinks. The eastern screech owl. They are patterned so perfectly, like tree bark, that even experienced birdwatchers walk right past one perched in plain sight. It doesn't hide behind a tree, it just becomes the tree. When it feels threatened, it stretches tall, flattens its feathers, and freezes into the shape of a broken branch, turning itself into furniture right in front of a predator. You'd expect a bird called a screech owl to screech, but get this, it doesn't actually screech at all. Its real call is a soft, wavering trill, and the name is basically false advertising. What it lacks in noise, it makes up for in appetite. One owl quietly takes out an astonishing number of mice each year, keeping the rodent population largely in check on its own. The most overlooked part is how it handles leftovers. It stores uneaten prey inside tree cavities like a tiny feathered refrigerator, coming back to finish the meal later. It nests entirely inside tree holes, often ones carved out by woodpeckers, and will return to the same hole year after year, like it paid rent. Not far from here, a completely different world opens up, wide and wet, and impossible to ignore. Orlando Wetlands Park. What looks natural was engineered to clean the city's wastewater, and it works so well that wildlife moved in, turning it into one of the state's best wildlife watching spots. Above these reclaimed waters, one bird has taken full advantage of the abundance: the osprey. Unlike most birds that skim the surface, they commit fully, plunging feet first and disappearing beneath the water in one decisive strike. The only raptor on Earth that fully submerges to catch fish. Their feet are built for the job. One outer toe swivels backward, locking prey in a 2 forward, 2 back grip, like a living pair of tongs. Courtship is refreshingly simple. The male arrives with a fish, the female accepts it, and just like that, the partnership is sealed. Year after year, pairs return to the same nest, stacking fresh sticks onto the old until the structure grows massive, sometimes heavy enough to strain the supporting tree. Juveniles eat almost nothing but fish from day one. The male handles the hunting, while the female tears each catch into bite-sized pieces at the nest. As these aerial fishermen circle the wetlands, farther north lie older, quieter waters, the Apalachicola River and Bay wetlands, where the current slows, the water darkens, and the wild feels even more untamed. It collects water from 3 states and channels it into a single bay, making it one of the most fish-filled stretches of coastline in the country. That blend of fresh and salt water once made the estuary so productive that it supplied a huge share of the oysters eaten nationwide. Sadly, the oyster beds collapsed, not from a natural change in the bay, but because too much water was diverted upstream, leaving the estuary too salty for them to survive. That same river sustains Apalachicola National Forest, the largest in the state. Beneath it lies one of the southeast's largest freshwater aquifers, a massive underground reserve that supplies drinking water across the region. Above that hidden water, nutrients are scarce, and the sandy, fire-shaped soil is so harsh that only highly specialised plants endure, giving this forest one of the highest concentrations of rare species in the east. Some adapt dramatically. Pitcher plants rise from pale sand, luring insects into fluid-filled traps where they're digested. When you go down and explore yourself, small details begin to stand out. Spiderwebs catching the light, air plants clinging quietly to branches. But to truly see them, you have to stay quiet and look closer. At the ground, you'll catch something moving fast. A brown Anole, tiny but furious, already squaring up for a fight with the one on the next log over. When a male spots competition, he unfurls a bright orange flap beneath his chin, a sharp signal that clearly declares the branch claimed. If the confrontation closes in, the defeated one may sacrifice its tail, leaving the twitching piece behind as a distraction while it escapes, then regrowing a replacement within weeks. Its colour shifts between brown and grey with temperature and mood. Not a full disguise, just enough adjustment to match bark and shadow. Most won't live beyond 2 years, which makes each defended perch feel temporary at best. And yet even this scrappy little survivor answers to something far greater than a rival on a log. Here the true power is fire, a force that reshaped the forest floor. In fact, this woodland depends on it. Without periodic burns, trees press too closely together, sunlight fades, and the open ground that so many species rely on slowly disappears. Flame behaves less like a villain and more like a careful gardener, clearing away dense growth so grasses, wildflowers, and the creatures that need them can return. The real trouble begins when fire moves too fast and burns too hot, an unplanned blaze that offers no time for escape. In moments like that, woodpecker nests can vanish in minutes, delicate pitcher plants are erased, and animals on the ground must either flee or fall silent. To prevent such chaos, land managers light smaller, controlled fires during cooler, calmer days, reducing excess fuel before it gathers into something unstoppable. Every wild place in the state carries its own version of this fight, and at Collier Seminole State Park, the water takes over, and the survivors there have found entirely different ways to hold on. Here, the coast changes quickly. Saltwater mangroves on one side, freshwater swamp forest on the other, with wildlife from both habitats sharing the same narrow stretch of land. Mangrove roots anchor trees, trap sediment, build land, and shelter young fish, quietly sustaining the state's marine food chain. This park also lies directly in the path of hurricanes, and time after time, the mangroves take the hit, bending rather than breaking, then returning faster than almost anything else along the coast. In doing so, the forest protects everything behind it, softening waves, slowing the surge, and guarding the shoreline. Rising above this living shield, over roots, nurseries, and storm-battered shoreline, circles one of the most recognised hunters in North America, the bald eagle. That iconic white head doesn't appear until nearly 5 years of age. Before then, it's entirely brown, easy to overlook if you don't know what you're seeing. Year after year, a pair returns to the same nest, adding fresh sticks each season until the structure grows enormous, sometimes weighing more than a small car. Despite the fierce image, it steals more meals than it earns. It watches an osprey do all the work, then harasses it mid-flight until the fish is dropped and swiftly claimed. Their partnership, however, is steadfast. Pairs bond for life, and if one is lost, the other may remain near the nesting territory, as if reluctant to abandon the address. Sadly, this eagle nearly vanished, not from hunting alone, but from a pesticide that made its eggshells so thin they cracked under the parent's own weight. Yet protection and patience allowed the species to recover, and places like this have become strongholds in one of conservation's quiet triumphs. And when the eagle drifts off and the tide settles, another figure takes its place. Smaller, slower, and perfectly content in the hush. The yellow-crowned night heron. This bird moves through shallow water in a low crouch, head tucked and body angled forward, and though it looks unassuming, that slow, patient shuffle is its greatest hunting advantage. When stalking crabs near a burrow, it positions itself with the sun at its back so its shadow never falls across the entrance, because even a flicker of shade can send dinner straight back underground. Once it snatches prey too large to swallow, it carries the catch away from the water first. Not for show, just to prevent an awkward last-second escape. After the meal, it coughs up a tight pellet of crushed shell and bone, and if you ever spot a scatter of these near the shoreline, congratulations. You found its favourite restaurant. When it's not hunting, it perches in the mangrove branches above the waterline, gripping even the thinnest twigs with surprising steadiness for a bird that spends half its life standing in mud. This bird is just one piece of a much larger system. the Everglades, picking up right where Collier Seminole ends and spreading into one of the most complex wetlands on the planet. Most people picture a swamp, but it's actually a river, impossibly wide, only inches high in places, sliding south so slowly it seems almost still. The water that shapes this river begins far north of the park. Rain gathers in Lake Okeechobee, then slips south in a thin, shallow sheet across the peninsula. The entire system breathes with the rain. The wet season spreads water across the plains. The dry season draws it back, compressing fish and wading birds into shrinking pools that erupt into sudden feeding frenzies. That steady flow links freshwater marshes, sawgrass prairies, hardwood hammocks, and salt-lined mangroves, distinct habitats bound by the same moving pulse. Sadly, canals and agriculture have cut the water flow so dramatically that the Everglades is now less than half the size it used to be. Rising across much of the area is sawgrass, razor-edged, fire-tested, flood-hardened, a plant tough enough to slice skin and endure the extremes that define this wetland. The best place to feel all of this up close, eye level, completely unfiltered, is a short trail where the birds have decided humans aren't worth worrying about. The Anhinga Trail. A narrow boardwalk takes you directly over the water, alligators resting below, herons standing close enough to touch, and not a single animal bothering to move out of your way. No feeding, no fences, no training. The wildlife just has no reason to fear people, so you're walking through a completely wild place that has simply stopped noticing you exist. Everywhere you look, the water is covered in lily pads. Wall to wall, edge to edge, impossible to miss. Each one is a single leaf tethered to a long stem buried in the mud below, so what seems like a floating ornament is firmly anchored, gripping the riverbed against the slow pull of current. A waxy coating seals the surface, sending raindrops skittering away, which means even after a heavy storm, the leaves sit dry on top, while resting in water beneath. Beneath that canopy, the light softens and the shaded water becomes a refuge. Small fish, insects and tadpoles gather there, turning every pad into quiet shelter and, inevitably, a hunting ground. For just a few days, flowers rise above the leaves, and during that brief moment, they generate their own warmth, subtly heating the air to lure the right pollinators. A plant that warms itself feels almost improbable. as though the swamp quietly bends the rules when no one is looking. Then come the jacanas, small birds with improbably long toes, stepping across the leaves without sinking, spreading their weight so lightly the water barely stirs, earning them the nickname Jesus birds. Not every newcomer is so delicate. Invasive species can spread quickly, crowding out native paths and reshaping stretches of the trail before most visitors notice the shift. Alligators swim and disappear beneath the lily pads of this floating garden, melting into the blossoms like little flower girls. When one drifts in open water with only its eyes and nostrils exposed, it isn't resting, it's hunting, holding a position so perfectly balanced that it can remain still for hours without betraying a ripple. If prey is caught, there's no chewing, just the sudden, violent twist of a death roll, tearing flesh in seconds. Here, they don't need to eat often. Being cold-blooded lets them slow their metabolism so drastically that a large adult can go months without a meal. And when one basks with its mouth wide open, it isn't threatening. It's cooling off, venting heat, because it cannot sweat. During the dry season, dozens will crowd into the same shrinking waterhole together, not out of friendliness, but simply because it's the only water left. Among the boldest residents is the purple gallinule, strutting across the lily pads, confident enough, at least when the alligators have already eaten, to go about its business in plain sight. It may be one of the most colourful creatures walking on water in North America. Purple body, blue forehead, a red and yellow bill, and bright yellow legs. Less like camouflage, and more like someone enthusiastically used every paint pot at once. Those oversized feet are not decoration. Each long toe spreads its weight so evenly across a floating leaf that it can cross the pads without sinking, stepping lightly as if testing a series of green tiles. And yet, despite all that flair, the bird can vanish in seconds once it slips into reeds or tall grass, its bold palette blending surprisingly well in shifting light. Family life is just as remarkable. Chicks leave the nest within a day, and older siblings help feed and guard the newcomers, a level of teamwork that feels extraordinary for a bird this small. But the Everglades holds far more than lily pads, and the birds dancing on them. Farther within, other corners glow with colour, including the vivid cardinal air plant clinging high in the trees. Compared to the wild pine standing in patient silence, another bright treasure of these uplands announces itself in soft, whispering song. The Florida scrub jay. It exists nowhere else on Earth. tied to a shrinking stretch of sandy scrub that has made it one of the most closely watched birds in the country. Unlike most wildlife, it shows no hesitation, perching on an outstretched hand, tugging at your hair, and locking eyes with the confidence of a tiny supervisor on patrol. Each season, it buries thousands of acorns across its territory, remembers where most are hidden, and returns months later. But as development breaks up the scrub, groups become cut off from each other, territories get smaller, and their chances of survival grow thinner each year. Moving along back in the marshes, a new burst of colour takes over, the roseate spoonbill, sweeping low across the shallows in a blaze of pink. That pink colour isn't something it's born with. It comes entirely from the shrimp and crustaceans it eats, which means if you stopped feeding a spoonbill its regular diet, it would gradually fade to white. The bill that gives it its name is completely flat and wide at the tip, and it moves side to side through the water in slow, deliberate arcs, searching by touch rather than sight. From the moment it touches something alive, this bird snaps shut with startling speed. Each sweep, a patient setup for a split-second strike. It's often mistaken for a flamingo, yet the two are only distant relatives, and the spoonbill proves more adaptable and far more at home across these wetlands. During breeding season, the transformation is dramatic. Bare skin on the head turns lime green, the eyes glow red, and the chest deepens to a bold rose, as if the volume on its colours has been turned all the way up. Not long ago, however, fashion nearly erased it. Pink feathers once decorated hats, reducing the population to only a handful of nesting pairs before protection finally intervened. Slowly, steadily, the species returned, and today these marshes support one of its strongest populations. While spoonbills wade nearby, the reptiles have expanded their reach as well. Alligators have conquered all the land, and another place on their favourite list is Green Cay Wetlands. Built from scratch inside a suburban neighbourhood, surrounded by roads and rooftops, it filled with wildlife so quickly, with alligators patrolling as if they've always owned it. Within the shallow marshes, concealed nests stir beneath layers of vegetation, and newly hatched baby alligators emerge, each no longer than a human hand. They come out already dressed in bold yellow and black stripes, which function as perfect camouflage, breaking up their outline against the shifting light of reeds and water. Even at this size, they carry a full set of working teeth and a bite sharp enough to break skin. Close by, the mother stands guard, and when danger looms, she opens her jaws, not to strike, but to scoop her young inside. On warm mornings, the hatchlings line the edges of logs and lily pads, absorbing heat to power rapid growth, tiny bodies arranged like a row of living solar panels along the shoreline. Their first meals are insects, tadpoles and small fish, but they grow quickly, and with each size jump the menu upgrades. Sharing those same sunlit logs, utterly unfazed by the toothy neighbours beside them, are the Florida red-bellied cooter, slower, softer, and living life at an entirely different pace. Unlike many reptiles here that arrived from elsewhere, this turtle is a true local, built for these waters, yet it's often overlooked, quietly outshone by louder personalities nearby. What surprises most people is how effortlessly it swims, tucking its legs back and gliding with barely a ripple, slipping beneath lily pads and past submerged roots as if it knows every inch of the bottom. Green Cay is just one link in a longer wetland chain, and the central Florida wetlands pick up with deeper water, wider skies, and a completely different energy. From the air, it looks less like a lake, and more like a thin sheet of water spread across the land, so flat and so wide that the far shore disappears completely into the horizon. Beneath it all runs one of the state's most active water systems, a connected web of lakes, rivers, marshes, and flooded prairies, quietly pushing water from the interior all the way south. All that moving water leads to one place, Florida's largest lake, one of the most important freshwater bodies in the country, Lake Okeechobee. Every wetland south of this lake depends on it. The water flowing out sustains the Everglades, meaning the health of this single body of water shapes nearly everything downstream. Unfortunately, fertilizer runoff fuels bright green algae blooms that suffocate life below, and when that water reaches the coast, the damage spreads far beyond the shoreline. Even so, the marsh edges stay busy, and in the dry season the white ibis stands out, sweeping the shallows in loose flocks and detecting food beneath the surface with surprising accuracy. That curved orange bill works entirely by touch, sweeping through mud and shallow water, snapping shut the instant it feels movement, hunting blind with every step. This bird is also a living water quality test. It follows crayfish, which thrive only in clean water, so a feeding flock of ibis signals the system is still healthy. During breeding season, the bare skin on their face flushes a vivid pink-red, and the bill brightens quickly, a sudden shift that signals they're healthy, well-fed, and ready. They nest in massive, chaotic colonies, herons, egrets, and spoonbills packed into the same trees, and the noise carries so far you hear it long before you see it. Sadly, disrupted water levels have caused ibis flocks to thin out in places. A quiet, early warning that something in the system is shifting, long before the numbers confirm it. As the ibis settle into the trees at dusk, another bird wakes up. The black-crowned night heron, built for darkness, stepping out just as everything else is calling it a day. It's stocky, hunched and short-necked, looking less like a wading bird and more like a grumpy little security guard who drew the night shift and has complaints about it. Those big red eyes are loaded with light-sensitive cells that let this bird hunt in near-total darkness, seeing movement in water that looks completely black to everything else. It stands completely still at the water's edge and waits, sometimes for a very long time, then strikes so fast it barely looks like it moved. What's surprising is that this heron uses bait, dropping feathers or small scraps onto the water to lure fish to the surface, then grabbing them the moment they rise to investigate. When chicks feel threatened, they puff up and lean forward to look bigger, brave, even if the results are mixed. These same waters flow east to the Indian River, lagoon marshes and Mosquito Lagoon, where salt water meets fresh water and the wildlife changes. The marshes holds more species than any other estuary in North America, not by a little, but by a gap that makes everything else look empty. Simple geography explains it. Warm tropical waters meet cooler northern currents here, drawing wildlife from both worlds into one natural crossroads. Just north sits Mosquito Lagoon. And yes, the name is exactly what it sounds like, but what lives inside is far more interesting than the name implies. It's so cut off from open ocean flow that it sometimes gets saltier than the actual sea, trapping fish that can no longer migrate and forcing them to settle in permanently. In recent years, most of the seagrass here is gone, replaced by algae blooms, and without it, the entire food chain starts falling apart from the very bottom. Gliding over open water and watching the fish below, the brown pelicans are already lining up, treating every single dive like it deserves a crowd. Usually grey-brown with a white neck and golden head, it changes in breeding season. The neck turns dark reddish-brown, and the head brightens to gold, like it dressed up for a date. They spot a fish from high up, flip nearly upside down, and drop like a feathered missile, rotating their whole body just before impact to protect their throat on the way in. That pouch serves a purpose. It snaps open beneath the surface, gathering fish and water together, then strains out the liquid before the meal goes down. It even doubles as a fan on hot days. The pelican flaps it like a built-in air conditioner when the sun gets too intense. The harsh reality is, it's not the diving that blinds older pelicans. It's the pollution and fishing gear tangled around this lagoon that quietly steals their sight over time. Not every hunter here needs the sky. Just ahead, standing perfectly still, in the shallows, the little blue heron plays a completely different game. This bird barely moves. It creeps so slowly that fish don't register it as a threat until it's already too late. As an adult, it hunts alone, and when the glare off the water blocks its view, it spreads one wing out like a sunshade to see the fish below more clearly. If that still doesn't work, it drags its foot across the mud to spook anything hiding underneath, then strikes the instant something moves. In my opinion, no other bird this size runs this many strategies in a single hunt. Patience, disguise, shade and ambush, all wrapped into one small, underestimated bird. While this heron works every angle down in the shallows, something overhead skips the effort entirely. The magnificent frigate bird doesn't hunt at all, it just steals. It chases other birds mid-flight, grabs them by the tail, shakes them until they drop their catch, or vomit it, then snatches the meal before it ever touches the water. Stealing isn't laziness but necessity. Its feathers aren't waterproof, so even brief contact with water can leave it stranded, allowing it to remain airborne for up to 2 months without landing. And despite that enormous wingspan, wider than a full-grown person is tall, the frigate bird's entire body weighs less than a large bag of sugar. On land, however, that sky pirate persona softens. During breeding season, males crowd low branches, inflate their red throat pouches to head size, and drum in unison until the trees glow with living crimson balloons. Heading west from the lagoon, the water calms, the crowds thin out, and the Gulf Coast opens up into the quiet tidal marshes of St. Mark's National Wildlife Refuge. It looks empty at first glance, But this flat stretch of grass and water produces more food and oxygen than most forests, making it one of the planet's most productive ecosystems. Sadly, when even a small stretch of marsh disappears, the damage spreads beyond the shoreline. Much of the Gulf begins life here, and without it, the chain breaks. Think of it less as a swamp and more as a kitchen that never closes. And at the edge of that steady work, the St. Mark's Lighthouse still stands, watching over the shore. What makes it remarkable isn't just the age. It's that the builders failed twice first, after 2 earlier attempts sank into the soft, wet ground before they finally got it right. They pulled every block from those failed towers and used them to build the one standing today, which means this lighthouse is literally constructed from its own past. It has since survived wars, hurricanes, and slowly rising water, and still flashes its signal over the Gulf every single night, completely unbothered. As you walk along Lighthouse Road, your eyes might suddenly meet the sharp gaze of a red-shouldered hawk. Unlike many hawks that favour open sky, this one deliberately chooses the damp, shadowed edges of the forest, exactly where frogs, snakes and crayfish keep low in the mud. It doesn't circle high and plunge dramatically. Instead, it perches low, holds an almost unnerving stillness, then drops straight into the undergrowth, as if the decision had already been made. That piercing scream it's known for. Strangely, it often grows louder when the bird feels uneasy, so the more aggressive it sounds, the more likely it's bluffing. Sharp-eared neighbours have figured this out. Some birds mimic its call near feeders, scattering the crowd before swooping in themselves. Bold impersonation with a streak of mischief. Pairs hold their territory for years, calling back and forth across the trees not out of romance, but coordination, quietly reminding every listener that this ground is already claimed. From this shaded tree line, the refuge opens back up to water, and following that water west toward the mouth of the Suwannee River. The mudflats and shallow edges attract a completely different kind of visitor, the American avocet, sweeping its upturned bill side to side through the shallows, like it's searching for something it definitely lost. That curved bill isn't just strange looking, it's wired with touch sensors, picking up the faintest vibrations of insects and crustaceans buried in the mud. No eyesight required. It doesn't hunt by sight at all. It hunts entirely by touch, reading the water through its bill tip in what looks like one long, unbothered sweep. To be fair, that's a genius move. It claimed the murkiest, shallowest water nobody else bothers with and turned it into a private, uncontested food source. avocets can be surprisingly aggressive with their own kind, stealing nesting spots and chasing off any neighbour that strays too close. No negotiation, no second chances. Sadly, nesting flat on open ground near shifting water means one surprise flood can erase an entire season of eggs in a single afternoon. As the avocet works the surface, something else commands the air above it, darting, pivoting, and vanishing faster than the eye can follow: the dragonflies. Out of every 10 targets a dragonfly locks onto, it catches at least 9. A success rate that makes lions, wolves, and falcons look like amateurs. The secret is those enormous eyes, wrapping almost completely around its head, giving it near total vision in every direction at once, so almost nothing flying nearby goes unseen. Sadly, they only survive in clean water, so when dragonflies vanish from a wetland, it's never random. It means something in that water has already broken down. It doesn't chase prey. It predicts exactly where the target is going, cuts straight to that spot, and intercepts it mid-air before the prey even registers the threat. Each of its 4 wings moves independently, allowing it to hover, reverse, and pivot mid-air, which manoeuvres engineers still struggle to replicate in drones. These marshes, mudflats, and river edges never ask for attention. They simply keep working, and a dragonfly spinning over the water at dusk is proof of how much unfolds in places most people never pause to see. This is Florida swamps and wetland regions, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of Zambia, check out this video.